morning, everyone. So let's start with Joanna this morning. Joanna Davis, MCC, has over 5,000 hours of coaching experience, spent 7 years as senior faculty for a level 2 ICF credentialed school, works in-house as an employee engagement coach for a South Florida Fortune 500 company of 20,000 plus employees. Is an ICF PCC assessor, serves as a mentor coach for Reciproc Coach, and has a small private practice specializing in coaching to executive development. Her passions include the neuroscience of human behavior, creating food forests, and trying to keep up with her Basenji.
Good morning. Welcome and welcome back. Since we have people returning, we have people here for the first time. So yesterday we talked about competency 3, marker 3. And today our goal is to explore competency and marker 8, the markers that go with competency 8. Thursday, the agenda is, and I think it's extremely optimistic, as Valerie said. Thursday's agenda is 6 listens actively, 7 evokes awareness, and then Fridays is 4 cultivates trust and safety, 5 maintains presence. So we'll see how much we get. See how much we get to cover. But for today, is there anyone who is comfortable reading aloud? Because I'd like us to read through the competencies and discuss the competencies, the background. So I see 2 are okay with reading aloud, 3, 4. Okay. So I've got some volunteers. So what I'm going to do, because I learned yesterday, some people are visual. So I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. Oh, wait, I have the wrong thing up. Just a second. That's not what I want to share. I want to share the competencies, not the markers. Here we go. Okay. All right. So hopefully what you see on your screen, that reminds me I have to move everything around so I can see all of you and also see the markers. Hopefully what you see on your screen is competency 8 facilitates growth. So the definition is partners with the client to transform learning and insight into action. Promotes client autonomy in the coaching process. So even before we start reading the markers, when you hear partners with the client, what does partnering mean for you?
For me, means that both want to gain something. It's not only giving, teaching. So there is an exchange and there is growth for both.
Beautiful.
What else?
Yeah, it's about partnering with the client agenda. It's partnering with, and it's energy as well.
A word would be for me together.
Yeah.
For me, is listening to the goals that the client that I'm partnering with, letting the lead be the partner.
I hear also the idea of supporting and challenging, like partnering, like really being a good partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a good partner supports, a good partner challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a good partner builds up.
Reflects the observations and the silent visuals and the energy shifts when they speak.
Mhm. Yeah.
Adi?
I think of a business partnership. If I am partners with someone in business, or if I'm partnered with someone in a relationship, who's in charge?
Both are.
Yeah. And the more clearly the roles are defined, the easier it is to partner.
Mhm.
So we talked a little bit yesterday about coaching agreements and things like that. And it's been top of mind for me because I'm working on that, where I work is a more clearly defined coaching agreement so that people know what their roles are. And one of the biggest challenges for a coach, and I talk about this every time I get a chance, is, for me as a coach, I based my merit, based my value on what my client got out of the session. What's the danger in that?
The want. The want is the danger. Also.
Yeah. Yeah, because really it's the client's investment that matters here.
Mm.
Yeah. But clients tend to look at coaches and say, oh, you're the expert, because they're used to people being the expert. I'm not the expert, I'm your partner. I'm coming alongside you. So I love the partnering conversations. And when you hear transform learning into action, what does that mean for you? Carol, you're on mute.
I think it's clearly stating, okay, what have you learned with this? What are you going to do with this?
Mhm.
Right? What actions are you going to take based on what you've learned?
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar, taking whatever new awareness they have and finding ways for them to actually put that in an actualized way toward what they're wanting to work on.
I think that the putting in practice what you have learned anchors it more. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the ICF stresses that
Yeah.
about, this awareness becomes action. And the funny thing is, it really doesn't say that in the markers. That's why I love bringing in the competencies, because the markers are the way we measure if we're doing the competency. So the marker is a measurement of the competency. Does that make sense or no?
Yeah, and in this specific case, it's the language seems to be more in the competency than in the, because I have the competency work here. Partners with the client to design goals, actions, and accountability is 8.3, seems to be very actionable and is in the competency, not in the markers, but one talks to the other. So
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So I listened to a lot of coaching over the years. One, being a mentor coach, being an assessor, all these things. And the question that I wrote down on my little cheat sheet: how can you carry this new awareness into your week ahead? It's like, oh, I'm keeping that one. So these are the things that I keep next to me when I'm teaching, when I'm coaching. I usually have, if there's a particular marker that I'm fascinated with, or a competency that I'm fascinated with, I will write it on a note and put it on my keypad, on the edge of my keypad or on the edge of my monitor, so that comes to mind. That was when I was studying for all of the testing, for the PCC assessing, or for my PCC, for my MCC, for assessor stuff. That's how I learned the markers, was pick a marker, write it on a note, and practice that marker for the week. It was that's just my way of going through this. And what does it mean for the client to have autonomy in the coaching process? I know we talked about this a little bit, but say a little bit more about that. what can you do? What can you actually do to make sure the client has autonomy in the coaching process? Or what do you do? Don't make this harder than it is.
I think usually this is the moment when they ask, what do you think I have to do? When the clients ask us. It happens a lot, right? So, and then I said, okay, what do you want to do, right? What is important to you? I think the partnership allows us to say, hey, we agreed. We don't have to say, we agreed that this is your part. What do you want to do? I think it is as simple as that, the question for me. What do you want to do?
So that's one way. If a client says, what should I do? That's one way to address it. What's another way? Because I love having options. So what do you want to do? What's another way when the client asks you, oh, what should I do? Or what would you do?
Well, you can first I mean, what I hear with this more client autonomy is also giving freedom to the client to push back or to change direction. This kind of, it's really creating space for really the partnership to flow both ways. So that's what I see into this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Inviting the client to push back is so important.
Yeah.
You know, there's markers that even talk about that.
So what options do you have? I think is another one. So, okay, if you don't have one, what do you think is possible? And just say, think about that. And they come with options. Usually when they go this direction, they find one that they because the other question is too direct. What do you want to do? It's putting in the corner. But the other one is more, okay, what possibilities do you oversee or do you see? And then they open up to creativity, which is, you said, is your favorite word, right? So
Absolutely.
I might put that ball back in their court by saying, what about this is important to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've even said, when they ask me what I would do, well, what's important to you about what I would do?
Yeah.
Because again, you know, as Marcia said, if you put it too direct, you know, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be asking the question.
Right.
There's a frustration that comes up. Whereas if I say, you know, what's important to you about knowing what I would do? As they're answering that question, they're answering their question, which elevates their autonomy. Some things I do is I use their friends and family against them. I'll say things like, you know, well, what would you know, is this what you would want your son to do? Is this what you would want your daughter to do? Is this, you know, what you would tell a friend to do? What would your boss tell you to do? You know, there's because anything they come up with that's outside of themselves is their own projection. It's what they already know, put onto somebody else, and then they can see it better.
I also, one of the things that I use, I say, okay, you are the boss, you are the CEO, and you're encountering this situation. What can you imagine you would do?
Yeah.
And imagine is one of those words.
Yep.
It activates, you know, me and my neuroscience stuff. It activates the part of the brain that is not based on fear. This part of the brain is actually based on trust. So imagine, create, ideate, curiosity, discover, explore, all gets this part of the brain going that fear doesn't allow for. So sometimes I'll say, what if? Because what if shuts this part of the brain down. This part of the brain cannot imagine. What if this happened? What if it was okay? You know, oftentimes when clients are shaming themselves for whatever they're feeling, what if it was okay to feel that way? what is okay to think that? What if? And it brings them back to a more productive space. So great call out on imagine.
Imagine. And the other thing that I used last week with the CFO, it was he was really stuck. So he couldn't get out of the box. So I said, would you like to brainstorm or role play? All of a sudden, when I said the word play, his whole thing, his whole position changed. And then he was able to see exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a key trigger for me with him is play. Also comes from this part of the brain. We don't play when we're afraid. So play, I would use play, and I would probably at some point, notice, reflect back to him. I noticed when I said the word play, you really lit up. What was going on for you right there? And that's a whole other marker.
Which one?
See, the funny thing is I have to actually
the queen of the numbers. So
well, the queen of the old numbers. The new numbers I'm not so sharp with. 6.4, coach explores the client's energy shifts, nonverbal cues, or other behaviors. Yeah, that would be a 6.4. That's why mine is written in tiny little print on one piece of paper. Yeah, who can see that?
can you share a copy of your notes, please? Those are okay, priceless.
Yeah, I don't know how I would shape. First of all, it's on colored paper, so if I try to scan it, it doesn't scan well. That was my only mistake doing that, but it makes it's a really easy page for me to find. I just look for that one lavender piece of paper and then. All right, so let's get back to our competencies, because we're 23 minutes into our session and all we have covered is the definition. So let's see. How about let me see, someone volunteer to read 1 and 2.
I can do that.
Okay.
Okay. 1, works with the client to integrate new awareness, insight, or learning into their worldview and behaviors. 2, partners with the client to design goals, actions, and accountability measures that integrate and expand new learning.
So what are you already hearing in common with these 2 competencies?
You're creating the learning with already an action of plan. I mean,
Really a focus on learning.
system. Yeah.
Really a focus on learning.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask a kind of a like personal, how do you do it question. But how many of you, when you are coaching, are focusing on the markers and how many of you are really focused on the learning? Or are you focused on an action?
I try to focus one at a time, knowing what I have to accomplish for the client.
See what is I have to accomplish?
It's following the process that benefits the client.
Okay.
Listening and learning, and they want to learn in a plan of growth. So it's part of the establishing at the beginning of the session what you want to accomplish, and then going into the goals. That's something I do. Maybe
Right.
I'm
So it's not a right or wrong. It's where is your current focus? You know, where is your current focus? And I'm hearing, you know, there's a focus on, there are specific things I need to accomplish. There's
Really, the client needs to accomplish within his goal, but as a coach, I am setting the guidelines of the session, having the learning and what they want to achieve as far as their growth.
right. Yeah. And yet what I'm seeing in this is it's really about learning. There's a real, in the competencies, there's a real focus on learning. Now we measure that through the markers, but there's a real focus on learning and then designing what's going to come out of that learning. Like it's not just learning. I mean, for me, if for those of you who have been coached by me, you probably know I'm very focused on what are you learning about you? You know, what are you learning in this session right now? I ask those questions a lot. And those questions come up in the markers. In 8.1, it says coach invites or allows the client to explore progress toward what the client wants to accomplish in the session. In 8.2, coach invites the client to state or explore the client's learning in the session about themselves, the who. 8.3, coach invites the client to state or explore the client's learning in this session about their situation, the what. So there's a lot, you know, that focus is on the learning, that focus is on progress toward goal. So yeah. What else are you noticing about 1 and 2?
I feel there is the part of the knowing and the learning and the awareness. And then there is always the gap between the awareness and the acting on it. So for me, there is really it's two, I would say the second one, design, goal, action, accountability, I would say is the easy part for as a coach, because it's at the end, like we can integrate. But when we are at this point is that everything else is there. So I feel like the awareness and the permanent insight is not concomitant. I'm not using them at the same. It's very separate things. It's more the wrap up at the end. Okay, so what do we do with this? That we know now. So, you know, how do we integrate this?
So how many of you actually use the questions in the markers 8.2 and 8.3? What are you learning about yourself in this session? What are you learning about the situation?
Yeah, I use it.
Okay. And when you ask those questions, how does that inform or not the actions? What is your experience when you actually ask those questions?
I think this happens when they when we ask the questions and what are you going to do, or what do you plan to do differently? What changes do you want to make? Things like that. And that's what I think.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing, you know, what do you plan to do differently? What changes do you plan to make? But that's not the same as asking, what have you learned about yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm saying this comes after. What are you learning about yourself, right? And what are you learning so far in this session, right? What are you gaining from how related this is to what you want to gain in the session? So this type of question. But after that, okay, and what are you going to do differently? So, or what do you plan to do with this new learning that you were gaining? This kind of questions. So.
Yes, yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, the thing that stood out for me in 1 and 2 was the word integrating, and what you were just saying is it is, you know, taking that knowledge of what they've learned about themselves and thinking about how do they want to go about doing things differently in the future, or how do they want to take that forward in whatever actions they're going to do, you know, next on their goals.
Right, absolutely. And my computer occasionally will do the little emojis all by itself. I'm not touching anything. My thumb was up. I have no idea what's going on. So we're just gonna laugh when they come up and hope it doesn't invent any new ones. So integrating the awareness, knowing what the learning is, the insights. So then we go to 3 and 4. Who would read 3 and 4 for me? Sully. And then Valerie, I'll have you read 5 and 6.
Okay. Acknowledges and supports client autonomy in the design of goals, actions, and methods of accountability. Supports the client in identifying potential results or learning from identified action steps, actually, action steps.
There you go. So what stands out for you when you read these or when you hear these?
Well, we have space of different, we can be creative on accountability. I mean, it gives the client the opportunity to have a conversation around, for example, method of accountability, with the coach. How do we?
Again, the word supports comes out for me in both of those, which means that the client is the person that's making the decisions about what they want to work on, and we're there to support how they want to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not inventing methods of accountability for my client. It's a common thing to hear in assessing is the coach will say, and I'll follow up with you. And I'll check in on you. It's like, that's a contra to the marker, because that's not supporting the client to support themselves. I recently, I completed a whole bunch of coaching arrangements, a set number of sessions or whatever. And I had completed a bunch of them at work. And it's, if I'm making my clients dependent upon me, what are they going to do when that happens? It's always about supporting the client to be independent. So when you think of methods of accountability, what are the methods you like for yourself around accountability?
I would like to coach with the markers in front of me and hold myself accountable for each one of them.
How many markers are there?
At least the titles.
Yeah, I don't know how I would do if I was trying to do all of the markers at the same time. So having something in front of you that holds you accountable is what I'm hearing. What are some other methods of accountability that that each of you like for yourself?
I keep checklists, of did I do it, not do it, what got in the way, maybe make some notes if things got in the way of it.
Okay, so checklists.
Yeah. I tell my, friends or family saying that what I'm going to do.
So you have a support system of others who, yeah. What are some other methods of accountability you like?
But as a coach or as a person, Joanna?
As a person.
As a person.
I do electronic reminders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting my calendar also.
Yeah. So why would I be having this conversation asking you what you like individually?
Because we all like different things.
Yeah, we're all different. And if we're supporting a client who has they don't even know what their method of accountability is, here's some things that I've heard people do. Any of these work for you? Because I've had clients that are like, I don't even know what accountability means. How many of you have had those clients? What does that even mean? Yeah. So, and it's helping them choose, what works best for them. You all know I like sticky notes. And I also like the reminders on my calendar and reminders on my phone. I forget how many methods of accountability I have. So, and I keep moving things around on my screen so I can see the competencies. So we already talked about the learning from identified action steps earlier. Valerie, would you read 5 and 6?
Yes. Invite the client to consider how to move forward, including resources, support, and potential barriers. Partners with the client to summarize learning and insight within or between sessions.
So what are you noticing as we bring this up?
I think it's really focused on afterwards, post session or between sessions. It is that what are the resources or support or the, so make sure, yeah, just give them the support or things that they need so that they can continue to work on themselves post session.
Yeah.
Reinforcement.
Yeah. And again, the reason we have these, the reason I have these conversations is because the competencies and the markers can be seen as a set of rules. And it's like, oh, I have to follow these rules. And really, these are support structures that are put in place to help people support their clients better. Where did the competencies come from? Does anybody know where the competencies and markers, like how were they originated? Did somebody pull them out of the air, or? It actually came from quite a bit of study. They had input, and the ICF does this on a regular basis. They have a cadence for it where they have input from professional coaches who say, this is how I coach, and this is what gets good results. And then they take that information and create, oh, here's the structure of coaching. And then we put our individual touch to it, and that puts the skin on it. It gives it, each one of us have our own frame of reference, our own colors that we use. But the structure of coaching actually comes from the study of coaches who've been doing this successfully. So every so often you'll see it shift or change because people find that there's something else that works. So yeah, as we look at this, summarizing, well, partners, first of all, that word, partners with the client to summarize learning and new insights within or between sessions, helps the client to crystallize things. And I love, considering how to move forward. Resources, support, and potential barriers. When I was trained to never talk about the barriers. Because whatever you focus on expands. Never talk about the barriers. But sometimes that's like never talking about the elephant in the room. And if they never get a chance to strategize about how to get around or over or through a barrier, then when that barrier comes up, they're stuck. But if they've worked through it in coaching, then they have a way. How many of you coached around, what barriers are in your way?
Try to.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say my experience has been just the opposite. I find that some of my clients want to skip over the barriers. Like, they're gung-ho in the moment and they don't want to really think about, oh, everything will be just sort of fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if the client wants to skip over it, what do you do?
You know, I don't push them a lot further on that. I'll just, you know, again, ask them sort of like, you know, what support, you know, what support would be helpful to you? You know, what will you do if you run into an obstacle?
Yeah, one of the things as an assessor, one of the things when the coach asks the client a question and the client declines, if the coach continues to go back and ask about it, that's a contraindication.
Okay.
Yeah. So it really is up to the client. We are supposed to let it be up to the client. If the client doesn't want to talk about barriers, don't talk about barriers. I had a coach when I was at PCC. I had a coach who only coached to, and it was a reciprocal coaching round through ICF. And I had a coach that only coached to what are your weaknesses? What are the barriers? What are you afraid of? And that was all she would talk about. And I told her, I said, I don't work that way. That's not the languaging that I use. I coach to what are the possibilities? You know, I want to be coached to what are my possibilities, you know, and what is my outcome? She wanted to coach to gaps. I wanted to coach to goals, you know, and she absolutely refused. So I did a basically a review of her coaching, marker by marker, because that's how my brain works, and sent it to the ICF and said, I do not want to be in this reciprocal coaching around with her anymore. And here is why. And they asked if they could give her the feedback. And I said, no, she'll know where it came from. And to this day, I regret that because she never got appropriate feedback. I had written up and that's what they said. They said, this is the best feedback we've ever gotten. Can we please give this? But yeah, it was really interesting. So it's one thing to know is when someone with your clients, they're always leading. And if your partner says, I don't want to go there, then we're not going there. You know, that's relationship 101. the least aggressive path. So when the partner says, no, I'm not comfortable with that, then we take a timeout on ourselves. So anything else around 5 and 6? I always like talking about barriers.
I just want to say something about the block or the, you know, because clients repeat behaviors, you know, over and over. So I feel as a coach that if you're not addressing it at one point, it's also very complacent, like the client's going to be in a loop forever. Mm-hmm. So it's also something to address one way. We saw maybe there is a vocabulary not to use or use. There is a way to invite the client to do that, but I feel not going for it is also very transactional, and you can do the best action plan behind. Nothing's going to happen, you know. Really, it's going to be surface job. I feel. So I would like your opinion on that, Joanna.
And that's Thursday when we talk about competency 7, evoking awareness. 7.5, coach shares with no attachment, and that literally is on here. Okay. With no attachment, observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, or feelings, and invites the client's exploration through verbal or tonal invitation. Okay. So what I'm observing is the last 3 sessions, we've done X, Y, Z, and it has resulted in this thing. Mm-hmm. What's going on for you? Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, so bring it up and then allow the client to make a choice. Bring it up, allow the client to make a choice. It's not don't bring it up. But when the client says, no, I don't want to go there. Okay.
No, sure. He has the final word, but okay. Yeah, you answer my question. Thanks.
Perfect.
What happens though when you feel like, you know, and I've heard from other coaches too, that sometimes people just sort of want to come and sort of vent endlessly. Where do you go with that? I mean, because you're not a therapist, you're not their therapist.
Right. So venting is a valid coaching agenda.
Right.
The coaching agenda is set up for venting. So, okay, so what I'm hearing is you want to use your session today to vent. 3.1. I go to 3.3. What's important to you about venting? They have to answer that question. And how will you know when you're done?
Oh, that's a great question. That's the key question. Yeah.
That's 3.2.
Yeah.
And how will you know when you're done?
Yeah.
And the odd thing is asking them how they will know they're done venting often sidetracks the entire venting session.
Right.
Is my experience. Sometimes they still need to vent. I'm going to feel better. Okay. And that's not enough for 3.2. I'm going to feel better. So what will you feel and where will you feel it? And then once I've got that, at least 3 of the markers, and because there's 4 markers under the 3s, when I've got at least 3 of them, they can vent if that's what they want to do. Now, do I want to coach somebody who just wants to vent?
Right. Yeah, that's, I guess, the question.
Yeah. And that comes to the coaching agreement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and knowing that my role is not a therapist. You know, I feel you would, and I have referred people to therapy.
I have to.
A lot of people to therapy. But I also have had the experience of coaching someone while they're in therapy, which it can be extremely productive. Suli, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. You said you need to ask 3 questions to be valid to comply with 3.
3. So cover 3 of the 4 markers. For your PCC assessment, cover 3 of the 4 markers under 3.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. For the PCC, you got 3 under each marker.
No.
That's for 3.
So for competency 3, there are 4 markers.
Okay.
We look at, well, here, I'll pull it. I don't know if I can change screens and you can see it. Can you see?
Establishes and maintain agreement.
Yeah. So if I think on my screen right now, it's talking about coach partner 3.1, coach partners with the client. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I was on the competencies. That's the markers, right?
Yeah, I just switched the markers page. That's why both of the links are in the chat, hopefully.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I always cover at least 3 of them in order to get a valid coaching agreement.
So I have another question. So this happened recently. It was about, so as a coach, I could see myself getting frustrated because the client had already established the goal, but then the stories began and the venting began. So after about 15 minutes, I say, I made an observation because it kept jumping from where it says, can I share something with you? How does that relate to the goal that you established at the beginning of the session? And would you like to establish a new goal? Because she went way out completely from the point. What would that comply with?
What would comply with?
Asking that question. What, after she's venting, I needed to make an observation and say, we are 30 minutes into the session. Would you like to re-evaluate the goal that you established, or would you like to go back to the goal you established?
In the new
What
market,
would you like to do?
I think they took away the one that says that you continue coaching in the direction unless the client states otherwise. They took that out of the current markers, but what you did was 7.5. You shared observation and then asked for the client's input.
Right. So that has nothing to,
Also, it also invites or allows the client to explore progress toward what the client wants to accomplish.
so does that check 2 check boxes?
Yeah, it's possible to hit 2 with, yeah, you can actually hit several with one.
Okay.
So, oh, and so I'm going to read the last 2 because I just realized we are 1 minute over time. I'm supposed to stop right at 10 minutes to the hour. So these 2 are really important, and I hate that we got left for the end, but the coach celebrates the client's progress and successes and partners with the client to close the session. So when celebrating the client's progress, how many of you celebrate your client's progress? Good. Yeah, because that is one of those things that keeps people moving forward. And then partnering with the client to close the session. Anybody have questions on that, or are you good with that?
Is there a structure for that you would invite us to do?
The one that I usually use is we have X number of minutes left. How would you like to close the session? There is one that I heard an MCC use. What do you need to feel prepared to close this time and go back to life? So I wrote it on my cheat sheet because I really like that. So I'm gonna bring that invitation to you because we're gonna close, but I'm gonna invite you to take a couple of minutes to close this for yourself and think about what you need to have or do for yourself to be prepared to go back to life. And all the other great classes that the ICF South Florida is having this week. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to tell you all that I'm extremely grateful to you for showing up. Thank you so much. And my pleasure. And I will be back on Thursday. There's a great presentation tomorrow morning. Valeska, it's on suicide prevention. Yeah.
It's not only a presentation, it's actually a training with certification.
Wow.
It's going to be very interesting. Yes, it's a certification.
Nice. So definitely one that you want to make sure you get to take part in. Thank you so much. Have a great couple of days. I will see you Thursday.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you very much.